The second lecture will be presented by Jiří Baroš, Masaryk University, Czech Republic.
Hello everybody, I'm really happy to be back in Cracow because I visited this conference 2 years ago and it was really a perfect conference. Today, the aim of my paper is to offer two possible directions. My aim is to offer two possible directions to follow for the contemporary discourse on the common good among Christian political philosophers. First, I will argue for a greater engagement with the project of Trinitarian ontology. Second, the deepening of this discourse should, at the same time, lead to a greater connection with empirical science. But to introduce my topic, let me say something about two main debates among Christian philosophers about the concept of the common good. So, in last decades, there have been two main waves of philosophical interest in the common good. The first wave was triggered by the polemics of Charles de Coninck against personalism. The most prominent representative of personalism was for sure Jacques Maritain. I think that in general, de Coninck was right on this issue. However, I would like to mention that the debate is not completely closed, in so much as such authors as Mark Spencer assert, contrary to the contemporary naturalists, that as persons we are not reducible to anything non-personal. This then entails that common goods are encompassed by or included in the overall gestalt that each person is. That means that they are aspects of each person flourishing. No common good can rightly be pursued at the expense of persons, their value and flourishing. The second considerable controversy has been provoked by Finnis's instrumentalist conception of the common good, and for sure there have been several alternatives offered against it, and the most notable aggregative and distinctive conception of the common good. And I just briefly mentioned that, in my opinion, the most persuasive conception is a distinctive one, which emphasizes that the common good is a distinct kind of good to be pursued and enjoyed together by people living in community. But I would like to not focus on these debates. I would like to mention some overall assessment of these two debates. And I think that analogously to the debates in political theory, there should be some new approaches to the common good. In political theory, at the level of the so-called ideal theory, we can say that both these debates were led in this level. And in general, ideal theory largely ignores the darker part of human existence as well as the dynamics of history. Far more sensitive to these factors is the so-called non-ideal theory. Ideal theory speaks of lofty aspirations, but is very far from reality. The interest in non-ideal theories in political philosophy coincides with the sum of Pope Francis's impulses for Catholic political thought, which, in his opinion, should be sensitive to all the tensions that occur in political life and focus in attention on the conflicts that constantly arise in the world of politics. The so-called ideal theory of the common good offers us an extremely harmonizing vision of the common good. However, it cannot be guaranteed that no competition or conflict of interest exists. Trade-offs have to be made between the goods of different people. My own good cannot be identified entirely with the good of others. If I pursue the good of others, I also lose the possibility of achieving part of my own good. So it seems more probable that in this world we can only achieve moderate harmony. The common good promotes the ends of the members of a society in some respect, and not necessarily in the sense that it benefits each of its members. Here the connection between the common good and justice is important. The common good must not be unfairly favored or disadvantage anyone. I believe that these harmony and tension-oriented approaches need not be in conflict, but rather that a properly Catholic vision of the common good but embrace both poles. To achieve this goal, there must be an integration of two approaches. In keeping with the project of Trinitarian ontology, Catholic philosophers should emphasize the dramas and the tensions of human life to bring out the sense in which the Trinitarian mystery offers an answer. To make this vision more convincing to contemporary people, it's necessary to offer empirical examples of when this reconciliation occurs. The role of the empirical sciences in this context will be first to analyze the virtue practices that lead to the partial resolution of these tensions, but secondly, it's necessary to focus on all the tensions that arise on the way to this ideal. The work of Pope Francis is extremely sensitive to the tensions and conflicts. Ultimately, in his opinion, there is a possibility of reconciliation which cannot be completely achieved on this earth because of a lasting synthesis exceeds the capacity and strength of human reason. Synthesis can only be rooted in the mystery of reality transcending ever greater God. I will not further analyze the Pope's views, but I will only mention two possible developments of his thought. The first is political and concerns the concept of the common good. One of his main sources of inspiration was the French philosopher and theologian Gaston Fessard, whose analysis of the common good, emphasizing its dramatic becoming in the dialectical tensions of human life, remained unrivaled. Secondly, we should appreciate the relevance of the Trinitarian reflections to the Catholic tradition of political thought more deeply. First, I will be brief on Fessard. Actually, in his work, we can find the analysis of the so-called categories of the common good. And one of these is connected with the concept of human rights. The second is connected with the good of political community. And in his opinions, human rights are often invoked against the particularism of community that tends to close itself off from the dynamics of the universe. However, if each of the first two forms of the common good is being pursued at the expense of the other, the social bond is broken or even destroyed. Only with the advent of the third category can there be a reconciliation in the universal communion of love. And my second point concerns the practical implication of theological and Trinitarian mysteries, because this universal communion of love, according to Fessard, is church. So that means that in a religious community, that is the church founded by Jesus Christ, God's fatherhood creates a brotherhood among men that transcends all divisions. All the persons of the Trinity work together to form this unique community. Created by the Father as social beings, we are called by the Son's redemptive work to a personal participation in the divine life, which is mediated in the Church by the Spirit of love bequeathed to us. Fessard's works thus hint at the integration of the inner life of the triune God, the relationship between the Trinity and creation, and the inner structure of the created world, which is at the core of the metaphysical perspective of Trinitarian ontology. To make this vision more convincing to contemporary people, it's necessary to offer empirical examples of when this reconciliation occurs. The role of the empirical sciences in this context will be first to analyze the virtue practices that lead to the partial resolution of these tensions. But secondly, it's necessary to focus on all the tensions that arise on the way to the ideal. However, first of all, I would like to reconnect this discussion to the topic of naturalism. Various representatives of naturalism have argued that there is nothing supernatural, but that the reality is simply a natural phenomenon that should be investigated using the scientific method. In contemporary debates, a distinction is made between ontological and methodological naturalism. According to ontological naturalists, all special temporal entities must be identical to or metaphysically constituted by physical ones. This concerns mental, biological, and social subject matters. Thus, in the mainstream philosophy, the doctrine of the so-called causal completeness of the physical, also known as the causal closure, was widely accepted. According to this doctrine, all physical effects have fully physical causes, which eliminates the existence of any spooky kinds of entities such as spiritual, immaterial deities, which are supposed to intervene in this world. According to methodological naturalists, both philosophy and science attempt to establish synthetic knowledge about the natural world through a posteriori investigation. However, I do not want to enter into these theoretical debates, which are way outside my area of expertise, but I would like to point out one puzzling practical phenomenon that arises from the current social scientific interest in research on human flourishing and its relation to religion. That is to say, I will draw on data from scientific approaches that are fully consistent with ontological and methodological naturalism. That means with an approach that does not presuppose the existence of any non-natural entities and seeks to arrive at knowledge through a posteriori explanation. In this naturalistic perspective, Trinitary ontology can be understood as a part of the stories that members of religious communities tell to make sense of their lives. What does this social scientific research demonstrate? It demonstrates that a way of life based on the beliefs that sharply contrast with the naturalistic worldview, that means the beliefs that are lived in like-minded communities, focusing on the pursuit of various common goods, is beneficial for one's health and well-being. In other words, religious communities can play, to quote Tyler van der Wiel, and can play an important role in promoting longevity, in preventing hopelessness and loneliness, and in promoting happiness, social integration, and a sense of purpose in life. But simply, they help promote human flourishing. And I think that it should have important practical implications, at least for those who identify with the religious tradition. If rationality consists in adopting adequate means to fulfill the proper human ends, that means our flourishing and well-being, these people are induced to consider whether to engage more in communal religious life. An approach to life that proclaims the possibility of flourishing beyond natural life on earth, that means even the possibility of God who transcends this physical world and is ultimately able to guarantee this goal, affects human flourishing outcomes in this world as well. So it's obvious that it's highly unlikely that people will join religious communities for health reasons. This is valid especially for those who have very distant experiences and values or believe in a naturalistic picture of the universe and exclude the possibility of God. Nevertheless, it is true that all ethical approaches, which are ultimately concerned with the common good, communal flourishing, or maximization of utility, maybe hedonistically understood as the fulfillment of pleasure, have good reasons to reconsider their potential negative views of religion. Moreover, they should practically support it, even promote it in a society, since it seems to have a direct causal effect on our physical and mental health and well-being. And it is this practical goal, a state of affairs in which people and their association flourish, that these ethical theories are concerned with. It is the ultimate political goal towards which all of our actions should be directed. So this is a positive part of argumentation concerning virtuous practices aiming at achieving of the common good. But I would like to also emphasize the fact that various social and natural sciences can enable us to see better the obstacles on our way to the ideal. And I would like to mention the idea of Alasdair MacIntyre in his Ethics in the Conflicts of Modernity, where he pointed out that we need to be aware of our susceptibility to error in those settings where it matters most in achieving individual and common goods. And according to him, an impressive catalogue of such obstacles to our thinking has been compiled by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, who have identified various types of biases expressed in erroneous estimates of probability and frequency of occurrence, and in dispositions to misjudge hypotheses and predict outcomes. They further showed that these biases are inherent in the human mind, and we need to be aware of them in order to overcome them. As MacIntyre stresses, no education in virtues today is complete without knowledge of Kahneman and Tversky work. And we can mention other results from psychology or social science. For instance, in sociology, there is research of group behavior about such issues as conformity, about such issues such as social cascades, and so on. And all this research can help us in our thinking about the possibility of achievements of many common goods. So for sure, this research can be really important for us if we try to find adequate means to the possibility of to achieve various common goods and individual goods. To conclude, I think that this social scientific and natural scientific discourse can be really useful for us, but it should not overstep its boundaries. So scientists must not overstep the boundaries of their disciplines or deny important parts of human reality, which is seen, unfortunately, in many evolutionary accounts of religion or in various forms of genetic or biological reductionism. These approaches overlook that people are also endowed with natural capacity to care for others for their own sakes, whereas they only highlight the tendency to prefer our own benefit to that of most other people. They then fail to see that healthy and mature people act on choices about consciously identified good. So that means that the phenomenon of intentionality drops out of their vision. Moreover, emergent emotional and cognitive capacities allow us to act for the sake of higher order goods, such as the common goods of our political communities. To conclude, I would like to emphasize the fact that political communities are always inherently particular interpretations of the highest, or have always inherently particular interpretations of the highest human good. The space of each city is always filled with a certain ethos that tells us something about the ultimate meaning of human life, as imagined by this or that particular human community. So it tells us about openness or closure to the mystery that the perspective of Trinitarian ontology attempts to reveal to us. In general, the political common good concerns the proper organization of human life, which should aim at the most perfect human flourishing. The perspective of Trinitarian theology or ontology suggests that we are incapable of this ourselves. That means that someone else's good will always be frustrated. The knowledge of natural and social sciences can help us in this, primarily in that it enables us to understand where we are making or are in danger of making mistakes in achieving our common goods. But moreover, the perspectives of these sciences show us that religious community pursuing their common goods are of great contribution to the well-being and flourishing of society, which is paradoxical in a contemporary mindset full of naturalistic thought. But social sciences, wholly consonant with naturalistic framework, show that these kind of communities actually bring us important benefits. Thank you for your attention.